So I want to read to this because Nancy Pelosi is not so subtly and not so expertly trying to make sure Medicare for all can't pass. For first act in power, Democrats consider making their own agenda impossible to pass. Oh, you can't make it up. You can't make this up. I know. We're not supposed to cover the Democrats. We're not supposed to call them out. We're just supposed to rant about Trump, right? Rant about Trump. Well, you're not going to take Trump out with this kind of leadership. This week, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi unveiled a list of new procedural rules that her caucus intends to implement when the next Congress is seated. Most of these measures are unobjectionable, quote, good government reforms. But one of them would create a new and all but insurmountable obstacle to the passage of many of the policies that the Democratic Party claims to support. Keyword, claims to support. The rule, proposed by Pelosi and Massachusetts Representative Richard Neal, would require a 3/5 supermajority to raise individual income taxes on the lowest earning 80% of taxpayers. Let me say that again. The rule proposed by Pelosi and Massachusetts Representative Richard Neal would require a 3/5 supermajority to raise individual income taxes on the lowest earning 80% of taxpayers. In English, that just means it would be, you'd basically make it impossible to raise money on the majority, raise income taxes on the majority of people. So you might say, well, Jordan, isn't that a good thing? They're trying to protect the middle class, the working class, all those things. Read the fine print. The rule proposed by the proposal, in effect, a progressive revision of an existing House rule. The proposal is, in effect, a progressive revision of an existing House rule. Under Paul Ryan's leadership, the current Republican majority established a supermajority requirement to raise income taxes on anyone. Thus, Pelosi's decision to retain the supermajority threshold on tax hikes, but restrict it to the bottom 80%, might look commendable on first glance. After all, in recent decades, America's richest citizens have seen their tax rates plummet, even as their share of income gains soared. So why not take measures to restrict future tax increases to the top 20% of earners? A spokesperson for the Minority Leader's office, Henry Connolly, describes the proposal as a populist measure aimed at repealing, quote, a Republican rule rigged to permanently lock in the massive tax giveaways to the wealthiest 1% and big corporations, while affirming Democrats' commitment to protect hard-working Americans. Well, that's what she's selling, but that's not the truth. Alas, there are several problems with this argument. For one thing, while the progressives are committed to increasing the discretionary income of the bottom 80%, that does not necessarily mean keeping their tax rates frozen at historically low levels. Currently, for much of the American middle class, health insurance premiums function as a steadily rising tax. Thank you. A bill that requires those households to pay a new, smaller monthly sum to the government, such as fund a single-payer system that would actually reduce their cost of living by delivering radically cheaper healthcare services, could hardly be called regressive. And the same can be said for legislation establishing universal child care, paid family leave, or any other program aimed at easing the middle class's financial burdens by dramatically expanding the public sector's ambitions. Equating support for middle-class families with opposition to increasing their taxes is a conservative project, which Democrats have no business advancing. If the party wishes to establish structural barriers to policies that would hurt the middle class, why not require a 3/5 majority to cut Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security? David Sirota, a good progressive journalist, said it really well. Let's take a look. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi is campaigning for House Speaker on a plan that would effectively prevent Medicare for all. And she's doing it in an extremely, extremely cynical way, because the language is great. The language is great. We want to bar tax increases on 80% of the American people. because Trump's tax cuts, 83% of his tax cuts went to the top 1%. So the language sounds great. And if you're not astute enough, and if you're not following politics, you might think the Democrats are fighting for me. But it's not that complicated, folks. It's not that complicated. And Bernie Sanders explained it well when he pushed Medicare for all. We are going to have to raise people's taxes for Medicare for all. We might have to raise people's taxes for free public college. We might have to raise people's taxes a little bit for childcare. But the things that they save, the amount that they save on co-insurance, deductibles, co-pays, the things that they save on private insurance, the things that they save in trying to send their kids to an insanely high college and having to borrow money to do that, the savings far exceed the tax increase. Or, as people in Europe say so well, and I've spoken with people in Germany when I was there last year, yeah, we pay a little bit more in taxes, but we don't pay for health care. We don't pay for schooling. We don't pay for daycare. So it's not thought of as, oh, we pay so much in taxes because the things that the government should cover based on human rights and if they care about their people, the amount you save is so beyond the amount you're spending on healthcare and these kinds of things. And the amount you save in the long run with Medicare for all is so much money because there's so much more access to preventative care. So women could get pre-screenings and things for all sorts of cancers. Same thing goes for men. And yes, remember, this is a super chat. We're here for this live stream and this marathon to serve you, but also to raise money. So show us the love in the super chat or GoFundMe if you can. But the amount of money that is saved, you know what? If you came to me, and I think a lot of you, and said, you know what? Your federal income tax is going to go up by 2.5% next year. And with that, you're going to get free Medicare for all, no copays, no coinsurance, no deductibles, as well as dental is included. I think you'd probably take that. And then you'd look at your actual savings and be like, holy shit. I got all this for only a 2.5% tax hike? But the problem is Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party are talking and buying into conservative talking points. The economy is not only about tax increases versus tax cuts. That is what the Republican Party extremists, dating back to Ronald Reagan, would like you to believe. Economic growth is not about whether you raise taxes or lower taxes. Economic growth is about increasing demand. Increasing demand, not increasing to the supply side. You know, my parents own a small jewelry store on Long Island. They've owned it for many, many years, right? So I've asked them, why would you hire more people if you got a tax cut? Not really. I said, why? Well, if the tax cut produced, if all of a sudden we started getting a hell of a lot of customers because people had tax cuts, sure, we would hire people because we'd need more employees because we'd have more customers. But if the tax cuts are only going to wealthy people and they're not going to middle class and consumers, then why would my parents spend more money to hire more people if they don't have more customers? You need more customers. So if you're going to do tax cuts, they need to go to working people, middle class people, poor people. But you also can create demand by helping people to save money. So you know what? If Jen or you people watching didn't, save money and didn't have to pay, I have a bill right here for $2,000 for my back surgery, right? I have a bill for $2,000 for my back surgery, and I got back surgery with insurance. If I didn't have to pay that bill, you know what? I might have a little bit more money this holiday season to go to a jewelry store like my parents and buy something nice for a loved one. Or I might have a little bit more money to go out to eat more. Or I might have a little bit more money to go take a vacation. It isn't rocket science. So Nancy Pelosi, in pushing conservative talking points, in pushing right-wing talking points about we're going to keep taxes low for 80% of Americans, without saying it, she's saying we're also going to make it impossible to push Medicare for all, which Bernie Sanders has been open and honest about saying, yeah, taxes will go up a little bit, but the amount of money you save far exceeds the amount of the tax increase, i.e., you're paying less. It ain't rocket science, folks. The Democratic Party might try and distort things. The Democratic corporate establishment might be trying to distort things, but it isn't complicated. Canuck says literally every nation on earth has figured it out. Correct. Sandra Martinez, companies need tax incentives to bring jobs here. Raising taxes all the time isn't going to work. Oh, Sandra. Oh, Sandra. Well, go read up. Go read up on what these companies that got the Trump tax cuts, go read up how many jobs they've created, Sandra. And once you get out of that bubble, sorry, I'm keeping it real because you sound a little more conservative, get back to me. Jobs haven't been created. You know what has been created by Trump's tax cuts? Companies have bought back the stocks that they sold. A lot of stock buybacks going on with the Trump tax cuts. Those one-time bonuses for workers that after taxes got down to like $700 workers got, that they probably immediately spent, that far exceeds the hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks wealthy people got so they could go buy another yacht. Paul says, if you're my boss and my children are healthy, you see my improved performance ASAP. Correct. Sandra Martinez, well, she knows if she raises taxes, she will lose. No, that's incorrect. You got to start reading polls. Majority of Americans are open to raising taxes, especially on the wealthy. And if you poll if you gave the majority of Americans two charts, okay, and you said 2.5% tax rate and whatever that comes out to, how much more money you'd be spending in 2019, you're going to get a 2.5% tax increase in 2019. And with that, I don't know the exact number, but you're going to spend, you're going to owe the government an extra $1,000. But with that 2.5% tax cut, you're going to save $2,000 in deductibles, co-insurance, and all these things. Which one do you think people would take, Sandra? It's not complicated.